Hello everyone. In this video, we will work with operations of fractions involving a complex fraction, absolute values, and fractions with algebraic expressions. Before we get started, I would like to remind everyone of the BEDMAS. It's the order operations. Order operation applies to a fraction as well. So the first step is we work with the brackets or absolute values. In this case, I would like everyone to start looking at the absolute values first, okay? And then you can implement that with the BEDMAS rule. Um, Absolute values basically is just if you have a negative values inside the absolute values, it turns into a positive. So you may want to do that before you apply the BEDMAS. The next step is to work with exponent. If you have a fraction raised to a power, make sure that you raise each of these components of the fraction to that power. So you bring the numerator to exponent n, and then you bring the denominator to exponent n, as shown in these formulas here. And we mentioned these formulas in previous topic, in topic number 4 of the same unit. And if you have to multiply and divide the two or three fractions in one line or together consecutively next to each other, you should do it in order of occurrences. Okay, addition and subtraction also in order of occurrences, or I usually say from left to right. All right, so let's start with example number 1. For this example number 1, you have a fraction and you have an absolute value here. You multiply it with a negative fraction and you divide it with another fraction. So the very first step here is you think I need to multiply and divide these three fractions. Then I just have the operation of multiplication and division. So I will do it from left to right, right? Because multiplication, division in order of occurrences. However, before you want to do this, you may want to change this into a positive number. That means you work with the absolute values. You take the absolute values away, you turn that into a positive number. Because basically, absolute values representing the magnitude or the true length of certain values. Then in this case, if you have a negative, we want to talk about the 7/9. Okay, so if you want to measure certain values, then you want the true value of that, which is a positive values. Before you can get that positive value, you have to take away the absolute values. And we went over absolute value, the definition of this concept in our unit number 1. Okay, so if you want to go back and review, if you have any question with the absolute values. And then the next step is you want to multiply and divide. So even though the BEDMAS rule saying that division and multiplication, but if you have just multiplication and division occurs right next to each other like this, then you need to do it from left to right. Okay, so we do from left to right. And this negative fraction, we still put it in the bracket. So any calculator will enable you to put in a fraction and then you multiply with another fraction, you divide with another fraction. Um, excuse me, just let me pause a few minutes. Not a few minutes, just a few seconds. I just want to check the volumes on my headphone. I just want to make sure that it's still okay while I'm recording it. Okay. I just hear a sound, so I think it's probably a sound from a notification somewhere. So I'm sorry about that. Okay, so let me show everyone the calculator that we use for this class. So for the calculator, we are using the Casio FX991MS in this case. So the reason I picked this calculator for this class is if you go into the School of Technology, you enroll in any program later at the college after you finish your current program, This calculator will require for the School of Technology. So it's actually very good and it's so very handy in terms of the fraction keys here. So I believe that I went over how to work with a fraction key using your calculator and the same calculator in previous lesson. So what you do is you note this key, all right? Okay, you also note that key as a negative. Okay, so you key into your calculator uh, using this fraction key and the negative sign so that you can work with your order operations. So what I'm going to ask everyone to remember is to make sure that you key in the right one. Okay, so if we get back to our lesson, I need to uh, okay, so I need to key in this fraction, multiply with that, you should put it in a bracket, you divide with that, you should put it in a bracket. Okay, so what I will do is I will let everyone try this for yourself, and I will demonstrate the calculator using example number 2. All right, okay, so for example number 2, what I need to do is I need to put in um, this value, right? So I need to put in negative 6 over 7, all of it square, subtract 6 square over 7. So you have to notice that there's a huge difference between these two fractions. So this one, I have a bracket surrounding this fraction. That means I have to raise this whole thing to the exponent 2. So according to these formulas, you are going to raise your um, numerator to exponent 2 and also denominator to exponent 2. Okay, so what I recommend everyone is you apply this negative to your number 6. So negative 6 squared give you 36, 7 squared give you 49. And for this fraction, the difference between this fraction and this one is you have a square, but the square is only for number 6 because you don't have the brackets, right? You don't have the bracket, the square is only for number 6. Therefore, in this case, I have 36, okay? And then I leave the 7 alone. If I take this 36 over 49, subtract 36 over 7, this is the answer that I have. So in the case I explained this to everyone in terms of using algebra, so without the calculator, so I just want to note here for everyone that, so if I note this, I will say negative 6 to the 7, all of it square, will be negative 6 square. Okay, then 7 square, this gives me positive 36 over 49. Okay, so you should put this negative in the brackets because you want to square the entire negative 6. So that's why you need to put the negative 6 in the bracket. So let me fix this and rewrite it properly. So right here, okay? So what happened if we use calculator? Okay, for calculator, this is what we will do. I will show everyone how to put it into this calculator in one step. Okay, so for calculator, the question I need to work with is negative 6 over 7, all of it square, subtract 6 square over 7. So what you should do is right away, I would like everyone to click on this you click on this bracket. Okay, so click on that bracket and make sure that you use the same calculator like I do. Alright, okay, so I click on that bracket and I click on this negative sign. So when I click on negative, I have a like this. Okay, so negative, and I pick that I should have a negative. Then I am going to press this key right there. Okay, so I press that key. I press number 6 first. I'm sorry. So I press number 6. So I press number 6, and then I press this key. So pressing that key, it will show that I have a symbol like this. And then I press 7. Okay, so that's representing negative 6 over 7. I close the bracket, so that means you click this bracket, close the bracket. I have this, and then I click this square, and then I have a square beside it. Okay, and I will subtract. Okay, I put subtract, The subtraction is this key. Okay, don't forget that the difference between the subtraction and the negative sign. So in this calculator, here's the operation. You find all the operation here: multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Here's only representing the negative sign. So then I will subtract, and then I put 6. Okay, you press 6, and then you put this key again, square, and then you press this key again, which will give you this. Okay, so I press that on my calculator as well, and I put 7. Okay, and now we put equal sign. Okay. Okay, so let's try one more time. Okay, so I should have bracket -6, and then I press that key and I put 7. I close the bracket, I have square, and then I subtract it with 6, and then I square that, and I press this key, I put 7, and I press equal sign. Then I have the number like this: -4, 20, and 49. Okay, so that is exactly equal to what we saw on our handouts, okay, in our workbooks. Okay, so let me get back to our workbook. Okay, so this is the answer that I saw. All right, okay, so that was also the same answer that we have on our calculator. So in this example, I will show everyone how to kind of review the calculator with everyone. But for the next few examples, I will just go over the order operation, and I assume that everyone already know how to key all of this fraction into your calculator. If you forget how to key this into your calculator, you should go back to the previous lesson where I actually show everyone how to work with the key on your calculators. Okay, so for example number 3, see this part here that I highlight in red? It means that you have to perform this operation first, and you do it from left to right. Okay, so after you perform this operation, you take 7/8 divided by 3/5 times 29/6. You key into your calculators exactly like this. Then you end up with this this mixed number here. Calculator give you a mixed number instead of improper fraction. Then you take this 11/15, subtract that. That should be the answer that you have. Okay, so while seeing all of this writing, I recommend that you use your calculator, because the lesson is all about practicing using your calculator and recognizing what operation that you should use. So I would like you to use your calculator, put it in front of you, try to key this in to make sure that you get these numbers, the red highlight here, and then take that away from 11 or 15. You should have the same answer as I indicated here for everyone. All right, okay, so let's move on to example number 4. So in this case, I have a exponent, right? So exponent for this operation inside the bracket. So that means I perform what inside the bracket first. You take -21/2 times 6/7, so you should have -9, and I square that number. Okay, and right here you see that before I divide, I see that this is basically is a multiplication. Okay, negative multiply with -5/3. So -1 multiplied with this, I should have a positive 5/3. Then after that, you see that after I square this number, become 81, then here's the operation that you have to consider which one you have to perform first. So if you take 81 divided by 27/11, give you a result, you add that with 5/3, should give you this number. Okay, however, the calculator will give you 34 2/3 as the mixed number right away. Okay, so if you chose to not going through all of this step and you are going to perform this, then I need you to make sure that you put everything in order and make sure that you uh, uh, tell the calculator what operation to do first. All right? Okay, so let's move on to the question number 5. For question number 5, again, this one is having a absolute values, but inside this absolute value, I have a multiplication. So I will work with this multiplication first. Okay, so I take negative 6 over 11 multiply 22 over 3. I end up with negative 4. You see, it's still inside the absolute values. And after this, I will work with this absolute values. I take this bracket away and it turned into a normal bracket and it turned into a positive 4. And then I clean up all the negative here. I clean up the bracket. So negative 5 over 9 is still there. Negative times positive give you a negative 4. And I times it with a negative number, so I still have to put this in a bracket. So at this point, what you have to do is this operation right here, 4 times negative 4 over 5, you have to perform this operation first. Okay, so this operation comes first. Okay, so basically you should have this. So negative times negative should give you a positive. So it will be positive 16 over 5. Okay, so if you key this into your calculator, you should end up with that answer. Okay, so you cannot just key in negative 5 over 9, subtract 4 times negative 4 over 5. The calculator will just follow what you ask it to do. The calculator doesn't recognize bad math unless you have to tell it what to do. So you should get this value first, okay, and then perform the very last step of addition or subtraction here. But subtraction turn into a plus because you take that into consideration when you multiply with that negative 4. Okay, so excuse me. So let's move on to example number 6. So example number 6 is it's more like an order operation, but it's written in a different way. So I can tell everyone that here is a numerator divided by that denominator. In order for you to divide this denominator into this numerator, you need to simplify it to just one fraction. Okay, so basically that's how it is. So I would work with 19 over 5 subtract 8. Using the calculator, I got negative 21 over 5. I perform the operation inside these absolute values. I subtract these two numbers. I should have negative 79 over 18. Okay, so one step at a time. And then I can write it as negative 21 over 5 divided by this fraction. Because basically this line here is you represent divide one fraction into the other. At the same time, I take away the absolute value, turn that negative into a positive. And if you just key this into your calculator, you should end up with the answer. Okay, again, this is more of the practice using the calculator, recognize bad math, and recognize that the absolute values in an operation, which you cannot find absolute values on your calculator. You have to apply the knowledge of absolute value, knowing that absolute value is a negative number turned into a positive number, and we go from there. All right. Okay, so I hope everything is good up to example number 6, that you use your calculator and practice. And don't try to key all of this into your calculator. I recommend that you do one step at a time. Okay, then if we make an error, we can always go back and trace our step. All right. Okay, so let's go to example number 7, and this one involving algebraic expression. Okay, I have 9x squared and 7x squared, right? You are adding these two fractions. Adding two fractions, it means that you need to have the lowest common denominators. And you know that x squared, you cannot find it in your calculator and key in an x squared. Key in x squared. So we have to do the step on the side, right? So 9 and 7, lowest common denominator will be 63. Okay, I should say the lowest common multiple of 9 and 7 is 63. So then you may want to compare this one with this one right here, right? Okay, so I would like you to take a look at from 9x squared, you want to turn into a common denominator of 63x squared. So to get from 9x squared to 63x squared, you know that you have to multiply 9 by 7. So see, from here I put 9x squared times 7. I must do the same thing on top is because I do the equivalent fraction. Whatever operation that I perform at the denominator, I must do the same thing for the numerators. So now you see it's 63x squared divided into 49, right? So 7 over 9x squared and 49 63x squared are the equivalent fractions of one and the other because you multiply the top and the bottom by the same number, 7. Okay, apply the same concept for this one. You also have to get the 63x squared as the common denominator. So you multiply by 9. Therefore, I multiply by 9 here. I do the same thing here. In the end, I achieve my purpose of having the 63x squared as the common denominators. You keep the common denominators as just 1, and then you add the numerators. So it turns to be 130. All right. Okay, so let's see. We have example number 8. So for this one, I am having, I subtracted two fractions, okay? And this fraction is supposed to be a negative fraction. And I have 5x squared and 7x squared. Again, similar approach. The lowest common multiple of 5 and 7 is 35, x squared, the same with this x squared. I apply the negative to the 6, so I have negative 6 to get from this 5x squared to the 35x squared. I need to multiply 5 by 7, right? So I have to take 5x squared times 7, give me 35x squared. So that means I have to multiply the same thing on top. Okay, so in this case, I want to make a note here. So this coming from 5x squared times 7. Okay, and this here is 7x squared times 5. So when I timed it, you see the same thing on top and the same thing on top. In the end, I have negative 6 times 7, negative 42, 9 times 5, 45. Write the denominator the same and subtract the the numerators. I should end up with negative 87 over 35x squared. Okay, so excuse me for a minute. I just want to take a sip of tea. And while doing that, I am going to rewrite this number properly, so it will be a 2 there. Okay, thank you. So let's continue with example number 9. Okay, so example number 9 is involving the whole fraction raised to an exponent. So I want to remind everyone this formula. A over b, all of it to exponent n. You raise each of this to exponent n. Okay, so if I have negative 7 over x squared, you see I write that as negative 7 squared, and x squared is just x raised to exponent 2 is x squared. Okay, so I have negative 7 squared turn into a 49 here, the positive 49. So this one should turn into a positive 49, which I write it here for everyone. Okay, and then the next step, I want to remind everyone here is just negative times negative. So make that into a positive here. Okay, so there you got a positive values because you take negative times a negative. And then after this, you apply the equivalent fraction step because your lowest common denominator is 6x squared. Between this is 6 and this is a 1 in front of x, right? So it should be 1 and 6. The lowest common multiple is 6. Between x squared and x, the lowest common multiple is x squared. Therefore, the lowest common denominator is 6x squared. So to turn this one, x squared, to a 6x squared, I have to take x squared times 6, right? So that means I do the same thing on top. Okay, so I already have 6x squared here, so I don't need to do anything but number 5. And to add this 2, you write the same denominator as 6x squared. 49 times 6 is 294 plus 5. In the end, you can just add the two numerators and present your answer as 299 over 6x squared as the final result. Alright, um, so I have a few practice questions here for everyone to try. I combined the practice for topic number 4 and number 5 together in this exercise. Whenever you see there's a symbol of a man thinking here, is for you to practice. And you can find the solution posted online as well. And this also concludes our unit number 2. And I do have additional practice for everyone to work on. And don't forget this additional practice that you are going to work with. You should concentrate on using your calculator, knowing how to work with your calculator, and recognize the absolute values. We will have to know what to do with absolute values because our calculator doesn't have the absolute value symbol on it. Okay, so I skimmed through this question for everyone. It's actually very much similar to most of the question that I've done in the example. So I hope everyone will take time to work on this additional practice. It's very good for you to practice and obtain more skill because this course is called Foundational Math Skill. All right, okay. So thank you everyone.